Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 3 for this news report. Today it's Friday, January 25th, 2013, and I'm Darko. My website is ggnonline.com and on YouTube. My channels are ddarko 2012 and 2013. Alright, so I'll just continue here with Iran. We just left off with Mali news in part 2. Iranian Guard asserts power over Strait of Hormuz. This is kind of a follow-up to what we talked about the day before yesterday. The top commanders of Iran's powerful Revolutionary Guard insist his force controls the shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, a gateway for 1/5 of the world's oil. Sanctions over Iran's nuclear program have battered its economy and collapsed its currency. The West believes Iran might move to make nuclear weapons. Well, so they're probably doing this so they can make nuclear weapons if they don't have them already, so that they can become, quote, threat, right? Expert warns that it's not enough to sanction Iran anymore over its nuclear program. From the 23rd, a leading academic says there's not much more the world can do to sanction Iran, and such penalties could drive Tehran to take radical action. So it says that the sanctions against Iran over its nuclear activity really has reached its end, said this dean of this School of Advanced International Studies at Johns Hopkins University during the World Economic Forum in Davos. He said unless there's a diplomatic breakthrough, or alternatively an attack on Iran, you're really looking at a scenario where Iran is going to rush very quickly towards nuclear power, because they also think, like North Korea, that then or when you have much more leverage to get rid of these sanctions. So despite international suspicion, Iran denies seeking nuclear weapons. And talking about nuclear, we have Kissinger says Iran nuclear crisis is close. The former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger has warned that the crisis involving the nuclear Iran is in a foreseeable future. 89 years old, still kicking out there, man. He said nuclear proliferation in the region triggered by an armed Iran would increase the chances of an atomic war, a turning point in human history. He says there has emerged in the region the current most urgent issue of nuclear proliferation. Let's not talk about it. Israel, right? It says for 15 years the permanent members of the UNSC have declared that a nuclear Iran is unacceptable, but Israel's Zionist state is, but has been approaching. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Make up your own mind, I guess, on that. Russia warns Israel and U.S. against strike on Iran's nuclear sites. Just covered that article just a couple days ago, like I said, but you have Kissinger in this other article. He also urged the U.S. and Russia to cooperate in resolving serious conflicts. So just go along, guys. Just go along with the regime change, you know. But actually, they're actually talking about what's going on in Iran. So they're warning the U.S. and Israel against a strike on Iran's nuclear sites. And Rand Paul, who's acting like he's a good old-fashioned libertarian and, you know, national sovereignty and stuff like that, who just returned from Israel, says what? U.S. should make clear to world any attack on Israel will be treated as an attack on the United States. So he's just basically admitting that the United States is a Zionist-occupied government. So Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul took what very well could be considered his most pro-Israel stance yet, saying in an interview that an attack on Israel should be treated as an attack on the U.S., saying, well, absolutely, we stand with Israel. And then we have Pakistan's nukes face threat from Army insiders from January 21st. Keep seeing little articles about Pakistan like this. The threat to Pakistan's nuclear arsenal is from within the Pakistani army, and there's no way external powers can destroy or seize these as long as Islamabad doesn't make a mistake of attacking India. Now remember that, okay? Because, you know, you have just another article where it's saying that, you know, a coup could happen, military coup could happen in Pakistan at any time. Then you have this, American Mumbai plotter gets 35 years. He scouted targets for the 2008 hit in India. David Coleman, it says here, an American was sentenced to 35 years in prison for the key role he played in the 2008 terrorist attack on Mumbai that's been called India's 9/11, kind of like, you know, Britain's 7/7, all that, which means it's an attack by the internationalists. So. And you know, why would he have any, you know, dog in that fight? I guess you could say. I don't have any faith in Mr. Medley when he says he's a changed person, and he believes in the American way of life, says the U.S. District Judge. He's getting 35 years in prison, and it says here the maximum sentence that the 52-year-old Hadley was life in prison. He agreed to cooperate and plead guilty in 2010, 12 counts to avoid what he would call a maximum sentence, death. He also secured a promise not to be extradited to India. So it sounds like a CIA, some kind of asset. This is following just some more background. Pakistan aims to develop smaller, lighter nuclear warheads, expanding its nuclear arsenal at a rapid pace. Pakistan is now aiming to develop smaller and lighter atomic warheads more suitable for use on missiles. They've begun to increase their plutonium production. Goes on, says Pakistan has shown clear signs of its intention to grow its nuclear arsenal. And the only reason they're not being treated like Iran is because they're completely under their sleeve. And I'm sure, you know, who knows if Iran is still under the sleeve of the globalists. They probably are. But either way, Kashmir police publish nuclear war survival tips. Officials in India-controlled Kashmir are warning residents, this is all around the same time, mind you, the 22nd of January 2013, to be prepared for a possible nuclear war by building bomb-proof basements and collecting 2 weeks' worth of food and water. You also have Putin telling his people, be ready for anything. You have in China, be ready for war. They're telling their people. I'm one of these people that say World War III is coming because I think we're already part of it, right? Part of what Albert Pike was talking about. And different types of entities such as him that we're already in, you know, the war on terror, liberty, sovereignty, as I call it. We're already in that. After World War II, World War III already started. And we've had mostly kind of these little small wars. Except for maybe Iraq, but who knows if we'll have some kind of West versus East big World War standoff where they can call a bunch of people and get more change, right? Break up families like they already have, even more. Just turn this place into an ash bin, right? Into a hellhole. I will implement President Obama's vision for the world, says Kerry. His vision for the world. Well, what's that vision? Kerry, U.S. will do what we must to stop Iran. Goes on, it says Senator Kerry vowed that in his, skull and bones, remember, that the U.S. would do what we must to stop Iran from ever acquiring a nuclear weapon, adding that the clock is ticking for Iran to comply with U.S. demands. I was going to show another article of this guy where he was saying, we need to, the whole Asian pivot, we need to scale it back, and we need to not go into that, peace and stuff like that. There's different ways of going about it, and then he does this. So there's all these kind of like flip-floppers. Not really flip-floppers, they're just two-faced, and they're not even really two-faced because they don't really believe in anything. They just do what they're told. So this paragraph basically is reiterating what I just said. Senator Kerry's comments come at his confirmation hearing for Secretary of State, a process seen as little more than a formality, as his brand of neo-confrontational bullet point speech giving a willingness to toe the line on the foreign policy virtually ensures his approval, which could come as soon as Tuesday. Netanyahu, after Iran war, to ensure political survival. So this is how they do it, right? They always have to act like they're being attacked to ensure political survival. What the Israeli war people have always done is try to get a war, and I think Netanyahu may see his political survival in a future based wholly on trying to get a war started with Iran. Iran's military official warns against enemies' attempts to influence the presidential election from the 24th. The deputy minister warned on Wednesday against what he called the enemy's attempts to influence the upcoming presidential election in Iran, like they do everywhere else, right? Like they tried in Venezuela. The guy actually, the vice president of Venezuela, saying that he's a target of assassination as, the president, he was reelected. Chavez is undergoing his battle with cancer, and his treatments, which are probably given to him. There's actually people in South America, politicians, say that the West, the U.S. in particular, is actually trying to take out the leaders in South America with forms of weaponized cancer and that. We know about color revolutions. We know that they happen. They know what they're trying to do out there in Georgia and Russia. We should make every effort to hold a sound election under a calm political atmosphere with the high participation of all groups of Iranian people. Next up, Iran president warns against issues causing Shia-Sunni division. So he says he warns against evil plots aimed at causing division among Shia and Sunni Muslims, stressing the importance of reinforcing unity among Muslim nations across the world. The president stated, quote, "The Zionist regime of Israel has established its dominance over a group of Muslims through deceit and lies, and Muslims are not united through to confront this occupying regime because of different and incomplete interpretations of the Quran." Then we have this, at least 51 killed and 98 wounded in Iraq. So, yeah, overall, 98 more were wounded across the country, along with 51 dead as a suicide bomber struck at a Shiite mosque today. So, pretty crazy because they were just carrying out a funeral for a hospital staffer who was killed yesterday. U.S. does not acquiesce to the state of Palestine, says Rice. The United States has objected to the presence of a senior Palestinian official sitting behind a nameplate that read State of Palestine at the United Nations Security Council. So, pretty crazy. Rice said Washington did not recognize a General Assembly vote as bestowing Palestinian statehood or recognition. Only direct negotiations to settle final status issues will lead to this outcome. Therefore, in our view, any reference to the, quote, State of Palestine, end quote, in the United Nations, including the use of the term State of Palestine on the placard and the Security Council, blah, 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 the use of State of Palestine in the invitation to the meeting does not reflect the acquiescence that Palestine is a state. So there you go. 9 countries, including Canada and the U.S., out of 193 voted against the Palestinian upgrade. Palestinians' London envoy, there is no two-state solution for Palestine, saying that according to a report by British news website, he made remarks on January 15th to the British Parliament where he was speaking, there is no two-state solution. Democracies don't fight each other, and if Israel is a democracy, I would claim that the Palestinians are also a democracy. If democracies cannot fight each other, then why not have one state, one man, one vote? Israel seeks to decrease the number of black population, reports say, saying that Israeli healthcare officials prescribe dangerous birth control drugs to women of color to reduce black population in Israel. They said they use the contraceptive Depo-Provera as a long-term birth control method to decrease the number of black babies. It says according to the report, about 57% of the Provera users in Israel are women of color, while they form less than 2% of the total population. So it says blacks in Israel face widespread discrimination. It says that in Israel they are poor, homeless, and discriminated against as the ideology of Zionism sees them as subhumans. Next up, Bill Gates' global vaccination program is God's work. In a recent interview with the London Telegraph, he's now claimed that his foundation's massive push for vaccination is not just an exercise of philanthropy, but that it is in fact God's work. So let's see what God's work is. At least 50 African children paralyzed after receiving Bill Gates-backed meningitis vaccine. It goes on here, instead of addressing poor sanitation, lack of clean water, these conditions, it says, but rather than meet these basic needs, the multi-billionaires and their allies have instead thrust vaccines on indigenous populations as a solution, which has in turn sparked a wave of paralysis among Africa's younger populations. U.S. pharmaceutical industry conducts drug tests on black women, says Dr. Randy Short. So this is kind of what we were just talking about. Analysis says the Pfizer Corporation, Israel, and America intentionally target African women with a deadly banned birth control drug that sterilizes and kills. So this doctor from Dignity Human Rights and Peace Organization says, I just want to mention the drug that the people are using is Depo-Provera. It causes cancer, contributes to AIDS and chlamydia and osteoporosis. It's illegal in Canada and in Europe, but it's being used all over Africa. It's being used on African American women by the Pfizer Corporation. They know it kills, they know it sterilizes, and they know that it will destroy people. Chinese media expands African presence, the launch of a new weekly and latest in Beijing's efforts to make inroads into a continent with significant business interest. Fresh evidence of China's growing media footprint in Africa rolled off the printing presses for the first time in Kenya last month. So China Daily newspaper recently launched in the African edition. Then Argentine destroyer that led war against Britain sinks. It's a symbol of decay for a once proud navy. Does Argentina's defense chief express shame Wednesday after a Navy destroyer sank at its moorings, putting on display the declining fortunes of a once proud fleet. It says here that ARA Trinidad led Argentina's 1982 sea war against Britain, but it has long been mothballed and used for spare parts. Next up, we have U.S. Navy ship aground on Philippine Reef taking in water. Officials say the priority first is to remove the fuel from the ship. So it's a minesweeper stuck on a coral reef in the heritage site off the Philippine coast. Then China sinks U.S. carrier in this missile test in the Gobi Desert. I believe that's what it is. They had successfully sunk a U.S. aircraft carrier according to a satellite photo by Google Earth. It says through the strike was a war game, the carrier a mock platform, and the sinking occurred on dry land in a remote part of western China. North Korea says the warheads and rockets were meant for striking U.S. North Korea promised more tests and to work on advanced long-range missile and warheads, saying that they are all aimed at the our arch enemy, the United States.